She was 69 years old. She had flown exactly once in her life before this flight, and that time she had been, in economy, seat 34B, pressed against the window, holding a photograph of her son, because she was terrified the plane would fall out of the sky. That was 23 years ago. This time her son had bought her a business class seat. He had called 3 weeks before, voice careful the way voices get when someone is trying not to cry. "Mama, I want you to sit at the front of the plane this time. Just once. Sit at the front." Her name was Maame Dufie. She was wearing a blue and gold Kaba slit dress. She had sewn herself on the old Singer machine in her apartment in Scarborough. On her head was a matching head wrap, careful and neat. On her feet were flat leather sandals she had bought at the Junction Market on a Tuesday morning because they were comfortable and she was 69 years old. And her feet had carried her far enough that they had earned the right to be comfortable. In her lap was a small glass container. Inside it was waakye, rice and beans cooked slowly the way her own mother had taught her in Kumasi, topped with a spoonful of shito pepper sauce, a piece of smoked herring wrapped in foil, and fried plantain still warm from that morning's cooking. She had been in the kitchen at 4:30, standing over the stove in the dark, humming softly. She made it for her son. He was waiting for her in Vancouver. The woman in seat 3B did not care about any of that. Her name was Claudette Forsyth. She was 46 years old, and she cared about the smell. She pressed the call button twice, pulled off her sunglasses, and said, loud enough for the entire business class cabin to hear, "Excuse me, I need someone right now. This woman has brought street food onto this flight, and I will not sit here for 5 hours with that smell. This is business class, not a food court." Every seat in the cabin shifted. The flight attendant who came to the call was Araba Boadu. She was 34 years old. She had been with Air Canada for 3 years. Before that, she was 11 months from finishing her nursing degree at Toronto Metropolitan University when her father collapsed in the kitchen of their Brampton home. A hemorrhagic stroke. And nothing was the same after that. She had taken a leave. She needed income fast, income with benefits, because her father needed physiotherapy twice a week, and the Ontario government waitlist was 16 months. And they did not have 16 months. A colleague told her Air Canada was hiring. She applied on a Thursday. She was hired the following Monday. The nursing textbook was still on her shelf at home. She hadn't been able to put it away. She had $214 in her account right now. Payday was in 4 days. There was rice and a half bag of frozen vegetables in her kitchen. She would manage. She always managed. She came down the aisle with the particular calm she had trained herself to carry, the one her senior supervisor had once called a gift. Araba did not think of it as a gift. She thought of it as a decision she made every single morning before leaving for work, standing in front of her bathroom mirror in her small one-bedroom apartment in Mississauga. The decision was, whatever happens today, treat every person on that aircraft like they matter, because your mama taught you that every person matters. She reached row 3. "Ma'am, how can I help?" Claudette did not look at her. She was looking at Maame Dufie the way someone looks at a problem they want removed. "This woman brought food. It smells. I paid $3,000 for this seat, and I should not have to sit next to that." She pointed at the glass container in Maame Dufie's lap. "This isn't the arrivals hall. Tell her to put it away." Araba kept her voice even. "Ma'am, passengers are permitted to bring food on board. The passenger in 3A has a valid ticket." "I'm not asking about her ticket. I'm asking about the smell." "I apologize for any inconvenience. May I offer you a beverage or?" "I want her moved, or I want to be moved. I want to speak to whoever is actually in charge of this cabin." Araba looked at Maame Dufie. The old woman sat perfectly still. Her hands rested on top of the glass container, not clutching it, not hiding it, just resting. Her chin was level. Her eyes looked out the window at the pale cloud below, and if you did not know what quiet dignity looked like, you might have thought she was not listening. But she was. Araba went to find her senior flight attendant, a man named Douglas, who came, listened to Claudette's complaint with patience, explained the food policy twice, and offered a complimentary move to a forward-facing seat. Claudette refused. She wanted the old woman moved. Ma'am, the passenger in 3A has done nothing that constitutes a conduct violation. I'm unable to move her. She brought street food into business class. The smell is an assault. Passengers are permitted to bring food on board. I apologize for the inconvenience. Can I offer you? Claudette stood up halfway in her seat. I want your names. I want to speak to your airline's VP of Customer Experience. I have friends at Air Canada's board level. Every single one of you will hear from my office. Then she turned to Maame Dufie. And she said something that would travel further than she could ever have imagined. You should be embarrassed, sitting here with your bowl of whatever that is, dressed like you've just come from a village market. This is not economy class. This is not charity. You don't belong here. The cabin went very still. The man in seat 2D looked at his hands. The couple in 4A pretended to read the safety card. Nobody said a word. Maame Dufie turned from the window, slowly, the way someone turns when they have decided that a response is worth the breath it costs. Her voice, when it came, was quiet, the kind of quiet that has weight behind it. My husband worked night shifts loading freight at Pearson's cargo terminal for 19 years. He never called in sick. He died in this country before he ever sat at the front of a plane. She looked at Claudette without anger, without tears, just steadiness. My son bought this ticket for me. He said, Mama, just once, sit at the front. I woke up at 4:30 this morning to make him waakye because he hasn't had his mother's cooking in 4 months. She lifted the glass container slightly. I'm sorry about the smell, but I'm not sorry for being here. The man in 2D started to clap, then he stopped himself. Araba, standing in the aisle, blinked hard 3 times. She pressed her lips together. She would not cry in uniform. She went back to Maame Dufie once Claudette had jammed in her earbuds and turned to the window. Auntie, she leaned down, kept her voice low. That waakye smells absolutely incredible. Your son is a very lucky man. Maame Dufie looked at her for a long moment, then she smiled, the kind of smile that starts slowly and then takes over a person's whole face. Thank you, my daughter. 2 words, Araba felt them settle somewhere in her chest like warm stones. Now, before we go any further, if you've ever had someone try to make you feel like you didn't belong somewhere you had every right to be, this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because what happens next on this flight is going to stay with you. For the next hour and 40 minutes, Araba did something she had never done in 3 years of working flights. She stopped treating Maame Dufie as a passenger and started treating her like family. She brought a blanket without being asked. She saw that the old woman's tea had gone cold and replaced it without comment. She noticed, without being told, that Maame Dufie held her lower back when she shifted in her seat, and she brought an extra pillow and placed it gently behind her. My mama has the same thing, Araba said quietly. She calls it her 30 years of standing pain. Maame Dufie looked at her properly for the first time. Your mother is Ghanaian? From Kumasi, she came here 26 years ago. Kumasi, something shifted in Maame Dufie's face. I am from Kumasi. Araba pulled gently at the conversation the way you pull thread, careful, curious. And for the next hour they talked. About Kumasi and the rain. About the price of plantain at Brampton's African grocery stores versus what it cost back home. About how Canadian hospitals charged $80 for a single X-ray and her father's physiotherapy copay had gone up 40% last year. $80? Maame Dufie slapped her knee softly. For an X-ray. Back home they would use better light and charge you less. Araba laughed so hard she had to press her hand over her mouth. Claudette glared at the window, jaw tight. At one point, Maame Dufie opened the container just slightly to check that the herring was still wrapped. The warm smell of shito and smoked fish drifted through the cabin. Claudette made a sound of disgust. Araba looked at the waakye, then at Maame Dufie, then back at the waakye. Auntie, she said quietly, I haven't eaten since last night. Would you mind terribly if I had just a small taste? Maame Dufie looked at her. Then she opened the container all the way. A small taste? Take a proper portion. You think I made this for one person? Eat properly. Araba took a fork from the galley and ate a spoonful of waakye standing in the aisle like she was eating at someone's kitchen table. She closed her eyes. Auntie. Yes. This is the best thing I've eaten in 3 years. Of course it is. Maame Dufie settled back in her seat with the satisfaction of a woman who has never once doubted her cooking. I have been making waakye since before you were born. My hands remember what my mind sometimes forgets. Claudette Forsyth was composing an email to Air Canada's executive team. She included the flight number, the seat numbers, Araba's full name from her name badge, and a demand for immediate termination. She did not know that the send button she pressed at 37,000 feet above the Canadian shield would become the first domino in her own unraveling. In the cockpit, 40 minutes before landing, the first officer, a quiet man from Newfoundland named Patrick, glanced at the small cabin monitor screen they almost never used. Captain, you might want to look at this. Captain Nartey Dufie had been flying with Air Canada for 21 years. He had over 16,000 flight hours. He had flown through ice storms over Gander and fog over Vancouver International so thick the runway disappeared until 40 feet. He was the kind of pilot other pilots talked about in the good way. He was also a man who called his mother every single evening without fail. Wherever in the world he was, whatever time zone he was in, she picked up on the second ring, every time, without fail. He glanced at the monitor. A woman in business class was pointing at another passenger with the particular gesture of someone who has never questioned their right to point. And then he saw the head wrap. His chest went cold. The blue and gold head wrap he had seen on that woman every Christmas morning. Every morning she had packed him waakye in a glass container and said, "Don't eat airline food, my son. It's not food, it's punishment." Patrick, his voice was controlled. The voice he used for turbulence briefings. "You have the controls." "Captain? You have the controls. I'm going into the cabin." "Nartey, we're 40 minutes out." "Patrick," a pause. "My mother is in business class. Someone is making her feel like she doesn't belong on my aircraft." He straightened his jacket, 4 gold stripes on each shoulder. He had worn this uniform for 2 decades and never once used it for anything personal. Until now. He opened the cockpit door. When a captain in full uniform walks into the cabin mid-flight, the air changes. It is something instinctive. The person responsible for the aircraft has left the front and is walking toward you, and no one knows what it means. Every head turned. Every conversation stopped. Nartey walked down the aisle with a stillness that made people sit up without knowing why. He reached row 3. Claudette looked up. Finally, she thought, someone with actual authority. "Captain, thank goodness. I've been trying to get someone to address this for the entire." Nartey did not look at Claudette. He looked at his mother. And then he knelt down in the aisle. In his captain's uniform with 16,000 hours of flight time and 4 gold stripes on his shoulders, he knelt on the aircraft floor and took Maame Dufie's hands in both of his. "Mama." Mom Dufie's eyes went wide. "Nartey," she breathed his name. You are the pilot?" "I'm the captain, Mama. I've been flying you since Toronto." "You didn't tell me." "I wanted to surprise you in Vancouver, but someone told me my mother was being treated badly on my aircraft." He looked up at her, and if you had been sitting in that cabin, if you had witnessed what every one of those 156 passengers witnessed, a man at the height of his profession, kneeling before a woman in a handmade dress with a glass container of waakye in her lap, you would have understood without anyone explaining it that you were seeing something real. Not a gesture. Not a performance. The genuine thing. "Are you all right, Mama?" "I'm fine, my son." She touched his face with her rough, careful hand. "It's nothing." "It's not nothing." He stood. He turned to face the cabin. Every passenger was watching. Phones were out. The cabin was a held breath. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice was even. This was the voice he used to describe weather systems over the intercom. "My name is Captain Nartey Dufie. I've been your pilot today. I'd like to take a moment to introduce you to someone." He gestured toward his mother. "This is Maame Dufie. She came to Canada from Kumasi, Ghana, 28 years ago. She worked as a personal support worker for 23 of those years. For people who don't know what that means, she bathed elderly patients. She dressed them. She sat with them through the nights when they were confused and frightened and their own families couldn't be there. She did this 6 days a week. She did this through Toronto winters with no car, taking the 52 Lawrence bus at 5 in the morning. The woman in 5C pressed her hand over her mouth. My father worked cargo at Pearson for 19 years and died before he could see me get my wings. My mother did not slow down. She did not stop. She kept putting money into the account she called the roots jar. She kept telling me, "Nartey, the tree does not forget the soil that raised it." He paused. She woke up at 4:30 this morning in her apartment in Scarborough to make waakye, because I told her 3 months ago that I missed her cooking. She heard that, and she went straight to the kitchen. He looked at the glass container in his mother's lap. "You called that embarrassing." He turned to Claudette. Her face had gone the color of the seat leather. That container holds 28 years of a woman choosing her son's future over her own comfort, every single day, without complaint, without anyone watching, without a single photograph of it for anyone to admire. His voice dropped. "The woman you tried to have removed from this cabin has cared for more sick and dying people in this country than I can count. She held strangers' hands in the dark. She did the work that this country needs done and does not celebrate enough. She came here with 2 suitcases, and the belief that Canada was a place where a woman's worth was measured by what she gave, not by what she wore or how her lunch smelled." He looked at Claudette one more time, not with anger, with something quieter and more devastating. She belongs everywhere, not because of what she owns or what she's built, because of who she is. The man in 2D was crying. The couple in 4A were holding hands. The teenager in 6B, who had been on his phone for the entire flight, had put the phone face down on the tray table and was staring at the captain with the wide expression of someone who has just been shown something they did not know they needed to see. Nartey turned to Araba, who was standing in the galley doorway with both hands over her face. "And I want to say something about this young woman." He looked at her directly. "She was the only person on this aircraft who treated my mother like she mattered from the moment this flight began. She brought her a blanket, she replaced her tea. She sat with her and talked about Kumasi." His voice gentled slightly. "She ate my mother's waakye, and she told her it was the best thing she'd eaten in 3 years. Maame Dufie made a small sound that was almost a laugh. My mother used to say, the truest thing about a person is not what they do when everyone is watching. It's what they do when they think no one is." He held Araba's gaze across the cabin. "Today, this young woman showed me exactly who she is. I won't forget it." The applause started in business class. The man in 2D first, then the couple in 4A, then it moved back through business like a wave finding the shore, and then into economy, row by row, and 156 people were on their feet somewhere over British Columbia in a plane carrying a Ghanaian woman's waakye toward her son, and the sound of it was something none of those passengers would forget for the rest of their lives. Maame Dufie sat in seat 3A and pressed the glass container against her chest and cried without shame. Claudette Forsyth sat in seat 3B with mascara at her jaw and her phone face down and nowhere to go. Nartey returned to the cockpit, professional, perfectly controlled. Patrick shook his hand as he settled back into his seat. "Best thing I've ever seen on an aircraft. Best thing I've ever done on one." The landing at Vancouver International was smooth and exact, a perfect touchdown. It was always a perfect touchdown when Nartey Dufie was flying. When the doors opened, Nartey came out to walk his mother off the aircraft personally. As they moved down the jetway, passengers reached out, touched Maame Dufie's hand, said "God bless you," said "thank you." A man from row 12 who had not spoken for the entire flight pressed a $20 bill into her hand for no reason except that he needed to do something, and that was what he had. Maame Dufie gave it back. "Buy yourself a good meal, my son, something your own mother would make." The man laughed. He did not spend that $20 that day. He called his mother when he got to baggage claim and told her he loved her, which was something he had not said out loud in 6 years. The video had been recorded by 3 different passengers. It reached 100,000 views within the hour. By midnight, it was at 2 million. By the following evening, when CBC ran a segment, "Pilot defends mother at 37,000 feet," The flight that changed everything. It was past 9 million and still climbing. The caption people kept sharing was 4 words: "Call your mother now." Comments filled in the hours that followed with a particular kind of honesty that the internet rarely produces. I grew up in Scarborough in a Ghanaian family, and my mom used to bring food everywhere in glass containers, and I was embarrassed by it as a teenager. I would give everything I owned to have that embarrassment back. I'm a PSW in Etobicoke. We don't get speeches or videos. We get 12-hour shifts and parking tickets and patients who sometimes grab us and sometimes thank us, and we come back the next day anyway. Captain Dufie, thank you for saying it out loud. I'm on an Air Canada flight right now, and I've been crying at my window for 40 minutes. The flight attendant asked if I was okay, and I couldn't explain it, so I just nodded. Claudette Forsyth was identified within 4 hours. Her LinkedIn profile, which led with a banner about authentic leadership and inclusive workplaces, was screenshotted and placed next to the cabin footage. The comparison moved faster than the original story. Her real estate firm's Google reviews collapsed overnight. Several clients sent termination letters by end of week. Her husband watched the video on the couch beside her in silence and went to bed at 9:30, 3 hours earlier than usual. Claudette posted an apology video. Full makeup, controlled voice, a framed motivational print visible in the background. It received 200,000 dislikes and tens of thousands of comments that all said some version of the same thing. We have all met Claudette. We know what Claudette sounds like. Claudette is not having a bad day. Claudette is a habit. The Dufie Foundation, a small charitable organization Maame Dufie had started 15 years earlier, sending money from Toronto to build schools and wells in rural Ghana, received $1.3 million in donations in the 2 weeks following the video. Mom Dufie sat at her son's kitchen table in East Vancouver with a cup of tea and read the donation totals on his laptop and was very quiet for a very long time. "I don't want to be famous," she said finally. "You're not famous, Mama. You're known." "What's the difference?" "Famous means people know your face. Known means people understand what you did." She was quiet again. "Then we can build the 4th clinic." Air Canada's CEO sent a personal letter to Araba Boadu. It included a promotion to senior flight attendant and a bonus that made Araba sit down on her kitchen floor and read the number 3 times before she believed it. She called her mother immediately. "Mama, something happened on a flight." Her mother's voice was immediately alert in the way Ghanaian mothers' voices go. "Good something or bad something?" "Good, I think. I treated an old woman the way you always told me to treat people, and everything changed." A long pause on the line. "Araba," her mother's voice was soft. "God gives us hands to help. You use them. The rest is not yours to carry." 3 weeks after the flight, Nartey called Araba. "Ms. Boadu, this is Captain Dufie." "Captain, hello." She was immediately formal. She was not sure why her heart was doing what it was doing. "My mother wants to meet you, properly, not in uniform." "Your mother wants to meet me." "She's mentioned you every single day since the flight. The girl who ate my waakye, the girl who brought me the pillow, she's very specific about the details." Araba laughed in spite of herself. "I was just doing my job." "No," Nartey said, and his voice shifted slightly. "You were doing what your mother taught you. That's different." A pause that lasted 1 second longer than a professional pause. "She wants to cook for you. Saturday, if you're free." Araba was free. She would have changed her plans if she hadn't been. She arrived at Nartey's house in East Vancouver wearing the nicest blouse she owned, ironed twice. Maame Dufie met her at the door, took both of Araba's hands in hers, held them a moment without speaking, and then said, "My daughter, you are even more beautiful outside of that uniform. Come." The kitchen smelled like Ghana, like a Sunday, like the apartment in Kumasi that Araba had visited once as a child and had never stopped carrying somewhere inside her. The table held waakye, of course, and Contamire stew and fried fish and kelaway and puff-puff for dessert dusted with sugar. Maame Dufie had been cooking since before dawn. Nartey was there, and his cousin from Burnaby with her 2 children who ate the puff-puff with the absolute conviction of people who have found the best thing. Araba ate until she could not move. "Auntie," she said, leaning back in her chair, I want to come here every week. Good. Maame Dufie poured her more tea. Every Sunday, I'll have the waakye ready. After dinner, Maame Dufie took Araba's hand and walked her to the small garden behind the house. There was a wooden bench under a crabapple tree that Nartey had planted the year he bought the house. They sat in the quiet. Araba. Yes, Santi. Why did you help me on that plane? Really, not the answer for your supervisor. Araba looked at the garden, at the tree still holding the last of the season's leaves. Because you reminded me of my mama, she said. The head wrap, the glass container, the way you held it like it was the most important thing on that aircraft. She wiped her eye quickly. My mama brings me food in containers too, every time I come home to Brampton, even when she's exhausted. She stands in the kitchen the night before and cooks, and then she takes the bus and brings it all the way to Mississauga, and she doesn't say a word about how much pain her feet are in. Her voice steadied. When that woman was being cruel to you, all I could see was my mama, and I thought, if someone spoke to my mama like that on an airplane, I would want someone to stand beside her. Maame Dufie held Araba's hand for a long time. The tree does not forget the soil that raised it, she said quietly. Your mother put that into you, every container of food she packed, every bus she took. Every night she was too all tired to say how tired she was. That is the soil you grew from. She squeezed Araba's hand. And I can see from the roots, my daughter, exactly what kind of tree you are. A pause. Now the nursing. Araba blinked. How do you know about? Nartey told me. When I asked about you, he did some asking too, a small smile. Finish it. Auntie, I can't. My father's care costs. Let me worry about what costs what. I can't let you do that. You gave me a blanket when I was cold. Maame Dufie looked at her steadily. Let me give you your future while you still have time to live it. Araba cried. Right there on the bench, under the crabapple tree, in a way she hadn't let herself cry in years. The way you cry when someone reaches into the place where you have been quietly carrying something alone and says, without fanfare, let me take some of this. Inside the house, Nartey stood at the kitchen window washing dishes and watched his mother hold a young woman's hands in the garden. He watched Araba cry. He watched his mother wipe her tears, and then Maame Dufie looked up at the window directly at him and gave one small, certain nod. He understood exactly what that nod meant. Neither of them rushed. He called her the following week, just to ask how she was. She called him the week after to say she had started looking at Toronto Metropolitan's nursing red mission forms, and she was terrified. The worst thing that can happen, he said, is that you go back and find out you're better at it than you remembered. That's not the worst thing. What is? That I'm exactly as good as I remembered, and I spent 3 years being afraid. A pause. Then don't spend a fourth. She went back to school that September. Nartey and Maame Dufie sat in the front row at her graduation. Araba's parents sat beside them, her mother with a glass container of waakye on her lap because she had decided that the graduation of her daughter was exactly the kind of occasion that required proper food. Mama, Araba said, looking at the container, you brought waakye to my graduation. You are Ghanaian, her mother said. Every important moment requires waakye. This is not negotiable. Araba's mother and Maame Dufie had met at Thanksgiving and had not stopped texting each other since. They texted in Twi. They texted recipes. They texted photographs of their children with the running commentary of mothers who have been watching and waiting and hoping for a very long time. Araba got a job at Vancouver General Hospital Pediatric Ward. On her first day, a boy of about 7 with a broken arm looked up at her with the particular wariness of a child who has already learned that hospitals mean pain. Are you going to hurt me? She knelt down to his level. A small pinch, then it's done. I'll count to 3 and you'll barely feel it. He watched her face for a moment. You promise? I promise. He held out his arm. She worked with the steadiness of someone who has been practicing this in her heart for years, and the boy looked at his arm afterward with something close to wonder, because he had barely felt it, just like she said. Somewhere over British Columbia, there is a flight that Claudette Forsyth still thinks about. Not the way you think about an embarrassment, the way you think about a turning point. She had driven past the Brampton strip mall where her parents used to run their small bakery. It was a nail salon now. She sat in her car in the parking lot for 11 minutes. She called her mother in Port of Spain. Her mother answered on the first ring the way she always answered, because some things do not change no matter how long you go without calling. Her mother's voice, quiet, expecting nothing. "Mama, I'm sorry." The silence on the line was not empty. It was full of everything that had been waiting. "Come home," her mother said. "I'll make something." She did not rebuild everything. She did not become a different person overnight, but she began, which is the only part anyone can actually choose. And Maame Dufie, who had come to this country with 2 suitcases and the belief that the soil you tend becomes the tree that shelters others, sat in a garden in East Vancouver on Sunday mornings with 2 mothers who had come from across the ocean, eating waakye and talking about their children, and sometimes they talked about Ghana, and sometimes about the price of yam at the Surrey market, and sometimes they did not talk at all, just sat in the sun with their tea, the way women sit when they have worked hard enough and long enough to finally rest. The tree does not forget the soil that raised it. And every Sunday morning, in a kitchen that smelled like Ghana, a glass container was packed with rice and beans, and a spoonful of shito and a piece of fish wrapped carefully in foil, and it was always ready before anyone else in the house was awake, because that is the kind of love that does not wait to be asked. It just does what it has always done. It shows up, it feeds you, it carries you further than you know. Now we want to hear from you. Was Maame Dufie right to stay as calm as long as she did, or should someone have spoken sooner? And what about Claudette? Do you believe that people who forget where they came from can truly find their way back? Drop your answer in the comments and tell us where you're watching from today. Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, Montreal, London, Accra, Kingston. Wherever you are, this family sees you. If this story moved something in you, subscribe to Ancient African Folktales so you never miss the next one. Because every tale has a lesson, and Ancient African Folktales never forgets.